Elemental wells. What the hell are they? Well, they are the next set of mods that have been introduced into the game with Season 13, similar to the Charged with Light and Warmind Cell mods that we have seen in the past. Now that they're finally all available to play with, we will ask the almighty question. Worth it? Not worth it? Well, at the moment, I'm going to say not worth it. Let's explore why. To buy these mods, simply go to the helm and scoop them up for some mod components if you haven't been doing so. First, we need to talk about what an elemental well actually does. When you pick up a well, which sort of looks like an orb of power if it had some color, as long as you have a well mod installed in your armor, one of two things will happen. If the orb color matches your subclass element, you generate ability energy for all of your abilities. If it doesn't match, you'll only generate energy for the ability on the greatest cooldown. Then, you have the effect of your mod, of which there are 6 mods. 4 of them are generators of some kind, and 2 of them proc an effect. Elemental Light generates a well whenever you get a kill with your super in the element of that super. Costs 1 energy. Elemental Charge gives you Charged with Light when you pick up a well. If it matches your subclass, you get 2 stacks instead, 2 energy cost. Elemental Armaments gives you an increasing chance to spawn a well with every weapon kill as long as the element of the weapon matches your subclass element, 2 energy cost. Elemental Ordnance generates a well whenever you get a kill with your grenade in the element of that grenade, 3 energy cost. Then we have the 2 fonts. Font of Wisdom gives you a 30-second buff to your intellect when you pick up a well that matches your subclass element. That's a 4 energy cost. And finally, Font of Might increases your weapon damage if that well matches both your element subclass and the element type on the weapon. 4 energy cost. So essentially, you want to make as many wells as possible, pick them up, and reap the benefits. How much of a boost is an elemental well to your ability cooldowns? Well, it's definitely a noticeable boost on your UI, but let's take a closer look. To test this, I simply made a well, swapped my subclass back and forth to reset my cooldowns, picked up the well, and timed my abilities. Both my grenade and melee, in this example, are tier 5. That's a 59-second cooldown. I pick up the well, and it took both abilities 53 seconds to recharge. A tier 6 ability would have recharged in 51 seconds, so this is just under 1 tier of stats per well pickup that matches your element. Non-matching will only do 1 ability. Keep in mind that if you pick up a well and your abilities are already charged, it'll just do nothing unless you have a font mod equipped. The most important thing to know about the generation of wells is that there appears to be a short internal cooldown, a couple of seconds or so. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're killing a lot of stuff very quickly, this will prove to be annoying. I believe that this internal cooldown is part of what is holding elemental wells back at the moment, but I wonder if removing this internal cooldown would be a bit too much. This is most relevant on elemental light and ordnance, aka super and grenade kills. While it will be very possible to spawn multiple wells from one super, it will be much harder to spawn multiple wells from a single grenade. You'll need to use a grenade that stays around for a short duration and have it get multiple kills a couple of seconds apart. This isn't exactly reliable though, and for the most part, you should expect 1 well per grenade as long as you get a kill. Elemental Charge giving Charged with Light means you either need to use another mod to generate wells, or you need to rely on teammates to generate wells for you. With taking charge being a thing, which is getting charged when picking up an orb of light, I'm not sure I'm really wanting to devote 2 mods to what 1 could do, at least if you're going for a generic build. More specialized builds may be able to make this work a bit more. For example, Crown of Tempest Stormcaller has the ability to spam a lot of grenades as long as you're capable of chaining the buff from the helm. This would mean a decent supply of wells, and as a result, more Charged with Light to do whatever you want with. The same can go for Phoenix Cradle Sunbreakers, as you have a healthy supply of grenade energy coming in, especially if you add in Elemental Ordnance. Elemental Armaments spawns a well in after a handful of kills as long as you are using a weapon that matches the element of your subclass. I tested this by running some lost sectors a few times, and I actually found that I was able to spawn Warmind cells at approximately the same rate as I was able to spawn in elemental wells. May I remind you that Warmind cells, when detonated, will destroy entire rooms of enemies. Granted, with Warmind cells, you are limited to a few select weapons, but the criteria for elemental armaments is also pretty strict. Font of Wisdom gives a 30-second buff to your intellect. I tested this by getting a kill with a grenade, picking up the orb, and then just sitting idle. My intellect in this example is tier 4. It's 4 minutes and 45 seconds to get a super with no activity. With this buff and a kill on one goblin, I got my super in 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So a 12-second bonus with a goblin kill. This is less than a 10 intellect boost, as tier 5 would get you a super in 4 minutes and 31 seconds. The intellect bonus is not displayed on your character sheet. I also tested this with tier 0 intellect to see how it scaled. Tier 0 intellect takes 7 minutes and 12 seconds to charge a super when idle. Tier 0 intellect with one pickup of a well with Font of Wisdom, 6 minutes and 44 seconds. So that's 28 seconds off. Keep in mind, you have to try really hard to get tier 0 intellect. People are probably going to have a bare minimum of, I don't know, tier 2 bare minimum intellect. Now granted, that sounds not great, but that's only one pickup. The more times you get this buff, the faster your super is going to charge. It's not like you can only get this effect one time per super. If I were to guess, I'd say you'd probably get 3 to 4 of these before hitting a full super, which is about 30 to 40 seconds of passive energy through the use of this mod. The lower your intellect, the greater the effect. Also, picking up another well refreshes this effect. All in all, this isn't a terrible option, but I'm also not in a rush to go put this mod on, especially without getting some better feedback that it's actually doing something other than a buff timer being on my screen. Even with that timer there, it didn't feel like much was happening, even if it was. Font of Might has some pretty high qualifications to meet. You need your weapon element to match your subclass element, and you need to pick up a well that matches both. If you manage to do all of that, you'll be granted with a 10% buff to your weapon damage for 5 seconds. To me, this is not really worth the effort and loadout requirements that you need to set up in order to proc this bonus, especially with how many damage perks we already have access to on our weapons. This is not a replacement for those perks. So, conclusion. The effects of elemental wells don't feel very potent right now. They also need to compete against much more fleshed out or just plain stronger mods in Charged with Light and Warmind cells. Charged with Light allows for, in my opinion anyway, a much stronger power increase overall, and I don't think elemental wells even compete with a fully built Warmind cell build. It's tough to compete against the ability to spawn a ball that can obliterate entire rooms of enemies. There's also the appeal of using them compared to something a little more engaging like Charged with Light or Warmind cells. Getting some grenade and melee energy from stepping on what is essentially a slightly different orb of power isn't exactly the most thrilling of experiences compared to exploding entire rooms. I think if you group up in a team that has everyone using these mods, especially if you're all using the same subclass, you might see some pretty decent results. Lots of ability energy, near constant charging of your super, and a decent weapon damage bonus, what feels like would be a lot of the time. But you could also just have everyone run whatever builds they want and probably have a very similar experience. In terms of a solo experience, I'm also not in that much of a hurry. All in all, these came into the game feeling very underwhelming. I would love to do some more experimenting over the course of the season, but I personally like the utility of the other two mod sets a bit more at the moment. Also, I imagine people are still getting well-rolled armor that can actually fit these mods, as only Beyond Light and newer armor is capable of equipping them, leading to a slower adoption. That's all I have for you on these mods. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.